the Superscope Storyteller presents Thumbelina.
Once there was a woman who wanted very much to have a child, but had no idea where she could find one. So she went to an old witch and asked her for advice.
I do so long to have a child. Can you tell me where to find one?
That is simple, my dear. Take this barley corn, plant it in a pot, and you'll soon see something. I promise you.
The woman thanked the witch and gave her 12 silver coins. Then she went home and planted the barley corn. When she got up the next morning, there was a beautiful tulip growing in the pot, but the leaves were all folded together as if it were still budding.
That's a very pretty flower. I think it is so pretty, I will kiss it good morning.
When she kissed the flower, its petals opened, and there in the middle of the flower sat a tiny little girl. She was so pretty and only as big as your thumb, so the woman called her Thumbelina. The old woman found a walnut shell for her cradle and placed it in the center of the kitchen table. There, Thumbelina played all day long in a pond fashioned from a washbowl. She would sail from one end to the other on a tulip leaf and use 2 thick horsehairs for oars. Thumbelina also learned to sing. Her voice was so lovely that the old woman would sit for hours and listen to her make up beautiful songs. One night, when Thumbelina lay sleeping, an ugly old toad came hopping through a broken pane in the window. It hopped right up to where Thumbelina was sleeping in her walnut shell.
What a pretty little thing she is. She would make a nice wife for my son.
With that, the toad picked up Thumbelina's bed and carried her out the window and back to his house by the river. He found his son sitting on a lily pad in the muddy water.
Look, my son, I have brought you a bride.
The younger toad admired the beautiful girl as he spoke.
Thank you, Father. She is so lovely that I do not want to lose her. How are we going to stop her from running away when she wakes up?
We'll put her out in the middle of the river on one of the water lily leaves. She will certainly stay there while we're getting your house ready under the mud and cattails. It will be a lovely home for you and your bride to live in.
The old toad took Thumbelina right out in the middle of the river and set her cradle on a lily pad. When she awoke in the morning and saw what had happened, she began to cry. There was deep water on all sides and no way for her to get to shore. When the old toad had finished working on his son's house, he swam out into the river to fetch Thumbelina.
I have come for you. It is time for the wedding. But first, I must take your walnut shell to your new home. I will be right back.
Thumbelina was so sad. She did not want to marry a toad or live in a house under the mud either. Now the little fishes who were swimming in the river had heard the toad and saw Thumbelina crying. They were quite angry that such a pretty little girl would have to marry an ugly old toad. So one of the fishes swam to the bottom of the river and gnawed right through the lily pad stem. Then the other fishes helped push the lily pad quietly through the water, far away from the toad and his mud house. Thumbelina floated down the river for some time. A beautiful white butterfly hovered over her and then settled on the leaf.
Hello, pretty little girl. Can I help you?
Yes, I'm escaping from an ugly toad who wanted to marry me.
Then let me help you get away even faster.
The butterfly told her to take her belt and tie it tightly to his leg. Then the butterfly flew in front of the lily pad and towed her through the water. What fun this was for Thumbelina! She was happy now, for the toad would never be able to catch her. The sun shone and the water glistened like gold as she skimmed along. Thumbelina had sailed some distance when a beetle happened by and saw her. He flew down and snatched her right off the lily pad. The butterfly could do nothing to stop him, for he was fastened securely to the lily pad by Thumbelina's belt. Thumbelina was very frightened when the beetle flew up into a tree with her. The beetle set her down on a large green leaf. He gave her some honey from the flowers to eat.
You are certainly pretty, even though you don't look like a beetle.
All the other beetles who lived in the tree came to look at her.
Why, she only has 2 legs. What a fright she looks. And she has no feelers. Look how thin she is. She looks just like a human being. How ugly.
When the beetle who had brought her into the tree heard what all the other beetles said about Thumbelina, he began to think that she was not so pretty after all.
I guess I was wrong. You are not pretty. I will take you back where I found you, and you may do as you like.
He flew Thumbelina down from the tree and set her on a daisy. Thumbelina began to cry. Soon a field mouse happened by.
There. Why are you crying? Come with me. I have a place where you can stay. All my children are gone, and I could use some company. Besides, you are a very pretty little creature.
After they had dined that night, the old woman mouse sat before her fireplace and talked with Thumbelina.
You are quite welcome to stay with me all winter, but you must keep my house and tell me stories, for I am very fond of stories.
Oh, I should like that, Mrs. Mouse, and I know enough stories to last all winter.
Thumbelina did all the kind old mouse asked of her. She cleaned her house and told her stories each night. One day the old mouse told her that they would have a visitor.
I have a friend who is coming to visit us. He is rich and has a beautiful black fur coat. If you could have him for a husband, you would be well provided for. There is only one small problem. He cannot see very well, and he hates the sun.
Thumbelina knew that the mouse was talking of her friend Mr. Mole, whom she did not want to marry. But she couldn't hurt the mouse's feelings by being rude, so when Thumbelina was introduced to Mr. Mole, she sang to him and told her prettiest stories. The mole fell in love with her because of her sweet voice and charm. He had recently dug a long passage under the earth between his house and the mouse's house, and he gave them permission to use it whenever they liked. At the same time, he told them not to be frightened of a dead bird which lay in the passage.
It must have died just before the first snow fell. It dropped into my tunnel while I was digging. Come, I will show it to you.
The mole led them down the path, and there, lying in the tunnel, was a swallow. Thumbelina was sad when she saw the bird.
Perhaps this is the same swallow who sang so sweetly in the summer.
Well, it will chirp no more. How glad I am that I was not born a bird. When winter comes, they freeze to death.
That night, Thumbelina could not sleep. She rose from her bed and took one of the blankets from her room. She went to the place where the dead bird lay and wrapped the blanket around the bird's wings and head.
There, little bird. Thank you for your lovely songs.
She leaned over and placed her head on the bird's breast. She was very much surprised to hear a faint heartbeat.
Why, you are not dead. Oh, please do not die, little bird.
Quickly, she ran back to her house and got other blankets and some warm broth. She returned to the bird and covered it with the blankets and fed it some broth. The little bird opened one eye and spoke slowly.
Thank you, my pretty little child. I am nice and warm now. I shall soon get my strength back and be able to fly into the warm sunshine.
Oh, no, not yet, for it is winter still, and you would surely freeze to death. Stay here, and I will nurse you until spring comes.
And so Thumbelina came to the swallow every night and took care of him. She didn't tell the mouse or the mole about the bird, since neither of them liked birds. At last spring arrived, and the swallow was well enough to fly. Thumbelina was sad to see her friend go.
Come with me, Thumbelina. Sit on my back, and I will take you away.
Thumbelina knew it would break the old mouse's heart if she left, and so she bid the swallow goodbye Now the mole had decided that he would marry Thumbelina when summer was over, and he made plans for a grand wedding. The thought of marrying a mole made Thumbelina sad. She did not want to spend the rest of her life under the ground. She began to cry when she thought of the coming marriage. The old mouse told her she was foolish.
Don't cry. He will be a good husband, and you should be thankful.
The day came when they were to be married, and Thumbelina asked if she could bid the beautiful sun farewell. She went out into the field and looked up in the sky. There, flying overhead, was her friend the swallow. He flew down and greeted her.
Hello, Thumbelina.
Thumbelina told him of how the mole wanted to marry her, and how she hated the idea of living underground for the rest of her life.
Come away with me then, for winter is coming, and I will take you to warm and beautiful lands.
Thumbelina thought for a moment, and then decided she would go. She climbed on the swallow's back, and they flew high up in the air. They flew for a long time, and at last came to the warm lands. The swallow flew close to some tall trees.
Here is my house, and you may choose one of the flowers that grow down there to live in.
The swallow glided down and placed Thumbelina on one of the large petals. How surprised she was to see a little elf sitting in the very center of the flower. He had on his head a tiny crown and bright wings on his shoulders, and was scarcely bigger than Thumbelina. He was the elf of the flowers. In each flower there lived such a little man or woman, but he was the king of them all. When he saw Thumbelina, he was delighted. She was the prettiest girl he had ever seen. He knew that he loved her, and so he asked her if she would be queen of the flowers and marry him. She now looked closely at him and realized that he was very handsome. Thumbelina knew that she had finally met her true love, and with this happy thought in mind, she gave her answer.
Yes, dear king, I will gladly marry you.
From every flower came forth a lord or lady elf, singing and rejoicing. They were married at once, and Thumbelina became queen. At the wedding, everyone brought them presents, but the best of all was a pretty pair of wings. They were fastened to Thumbelina's back, so she could fly from flower to flower. She thanked the swallow for bringing her to such a wonderful place, and she and the Elf King lived happily ever after.